Hello and welcome to the Celtic Down Under Tuesday Crew podcast. My name's Stephen McCutcheon and I'm delighted to be joined tonight by my fellow Tims, Willie, Dave and Steve. How are you doing, Willie?
Doing pretty well. Had a busy day, so a little bit tired at the moment, but doing well on the whole.
Yeah, so for those of you not in the Southern Hemisphere, it's Anzac Day here in Australia and New Zealand. So how was your Anzac Day, Dave?
Anzac Day, yeah, I didn't take the day off really. I was working today, but I was actually in a small town called Clunes, which is about half an hour or so here from Ballarat. And I don't know, I got a whole new appreciation for Anzac Day, actually. Because it was a tiny little community and everybody came out and the march, there was about probably 7 or 8 people in the march because that's how many were left from, I think it must have been Vietnam War wet vets or whatever it was. But it was quite touching actually. And with like some of the high school kids with the bagpipes and stuff like that. Yeah, I had a really good day. Yeah.
And Steve, how's things with you?
Yeah, very good. So not quite as rural as Dave, but I was down at the dawn service up in Avalon this morning, and then just a bit of farm time through the course of the day. So yeah, public holiday for anyone listening from overseas. So nice little midweek break.
Yeah, Anzac Day is usually quite a good day in Sydney. I was just saying to Willie before, you get a lot of bagpipers hanging around after the parade and you get little impromptu jamming sessions springing up in some of the pubs. So generally quite a good day. Didn't partake in any of that today, but yeah, we had a nice day.
Well, where I was, just next to me, the building next to me was the RSL, the Return Services League, which is the epicenter, and then over the road is the National Hotel, where they were doing 2 up all day. Afterwards, which is a kind of a tradition, only really on Anzac Day did they kind of do. It's like betting on flipping coins and stuff like that, and it was raucous. I was thinking, God, what am I doing over here? Working for the day, but yeah, it was beautiful day.
All right, so welcome everyone joining us live in our YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. This really helps us grow the channel. And if you're listening to the audio, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you want to join the convo, you can reach out to us on any of our social media channels. We're on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter, and all the handles are at the top of the screen or in the show notes. So before we dive into this week's goings-on, I was given a task last week about finding out the meaning of the Kilmarnock club crest, particularly the 2-fingered hand gesture and the squirrels. Now, fortunately, some of the suggestions in the comments were wide of the mark. So here's the story. All right, so the Killie crest is based on the crest of the borough of Kilmarnock, the ancient borough of Kilmarnock, which in turn is based on the coat of arms of the Boyd family, who were the family who owned the lands which became the town and whose ancestral home was in Kilmarnock Castle, which was later renamed as Dean Castle, which now has a nice big country park around it for anyone in the west of Scotland. The story goes all the way back to the Battle of Largs in 1263, when the Scots army under King Alexander III defeated an army of invading Vikings. Robert Boyd was one of the king's most trusted knights, and he was given a key task to clear some Vikings from some high ground overlooking the beach. And as Boyd left, the king called out in Latin the word confido, which means I trust. And he made the 2-finger gesture seen on the crest as a signature of trust. And the word confido also appears on the crest. So some years later, the Boyd family were gifted the land surrounding Kilmarnock by King Robert I, also known as Robert the Bruce, as a reward for supporting him in the Battle of Bannockburn in 1314. And this land contained large areas of forest, which were noted for the large population of red squirrels. And the land around Dean Castle in the country park still has a high population of red squirrels, which essentially are dying out in a lot of other areas in Scotland due to the non-Indigenous grey squirrels. So the squirrel became synonymous with the town of Kilmarnock, and that's why the hand gesture and the Squirrels ended up on the crest. So there you go. No prostate exams or colonoscopies involved. Are we happy with this explanation?
No. Is anyone else getting like Bob Mortimer, Would I Lie to You vibes out of Stephen's explanation there? That's what it came across as. So yeah.
I'm sure it's all entirely true. That's a fascinating backstory there. We did not pick that, and it's good to know what the expectations are when we set a homework task on Celtic Down Under. That we'll be looking forward to getting it all done on time. But no, that is pretty fascinating, and I think we were all way off the mark. So there you go. Don't trust us.
Yeah, you were way off the mark with some. I mean, the comment section went down a real bad tunnel. To be honest with you, ended up in a really bad place last week. So let's try and keep it above board this week then. So Willie, are you happy with that?
Aye, that'll do for me. Yeah. I didn't know where it all came from. I wasn't sure, so it's sort of shone a bit of light onto the situation. It's nice to know.
Yeah, you get higher value content on the Tuesday crew. I bet you didn't think today.
Definitely.
The Battle of Largs and Bannockburn, but there you go.
Yeah.
All right, straight into the other stuff. So Celtic lost their 100% home record at the weekend there with a 1-1 draw with Motherwell. Callum McGregor scoring in the 24th minute and Van Veen equalising for Motherwell in the 55th. I'll just go around, get all your thoughts on the game and then see what you think were the major problems we had. I'll maybe go to you first, Steve.
Oh, look, if I was to summarise it, I'd say it was a pretty ordinary day at the office, really. I think we created some decent chances, without going down the whole stats route. We did create a number of chances. In fact, we were just shy of our average chance creation for the season. But having said that, we really didn't look like we were going to be taking them anytime soon. It felt like we could still be playing now and not really scoring too often. Summary would be, there was a few players had off days, and we'll drill into a little bit of that in more detail. But my summary would be a pretty poor day at the office, and it felt like we lacked some creativity, coming from the midfield, and it felt like our forward play was just slightly off. Would be the summary from me.
Yeah, Willie, what do you think?
Aye, pretty similar to Stevie. Right, it was a bad day at the office. I mean, we didn't look like we were going to lose the game. We were midfield defence. We were in control. We had the ball. We had plenty of possession. But when it came to the final third, we just made the wrong choices at the wrong times. Kept persisting with low crosses the whole way through the first half. Motherwell were just soaking them up, punting them back up the pitch. McGregor's goal was a nice goal. It was a great takedown from Awata. He's even credited with the assist for the goal. It was a great takedown, and we flick on to McGregor for the goal, but we just didn't seem to know what to do with the ball once we got into the final third. It just every time it was the wrong decision they were making. And I'm not sure what Greg Taylor was doing when Van Veen went through in the 51st minute. Just turned him inside out. I think the message just forgot where he was in the pitch. He did a wee spin around, and at that time Van Veen was away, got a shot off, and it was a goal. So, poor day at the office. Nothing more you can say than that, really.
Dave, any thoughts on the game?
Yeah, it was a pretty frustrating day on Saturday. My Australian footy team in the AFL had a pretty big loss, but that's par for the course these days. Then Western United played against Melbourne City, of all sides, and got beaten 3-1 and put us out of the Commonwealth. That's basically it for the season. And then I thought, well, at least there's one thing I can count on this weekend. I went to turn the TV on KO streaming service, and they were playing Hearts versus Ross County or something like that. And so I missed it. I actually didn't see it, and I was trying to hold out to try and work out how to see it. And then So that might have been the small mercy I got on Saturdays, and I didn't actually have to watch that. So yeah, I can't add a great deal more. I've watched the highlights and kind of listened to the guys last night, really break it down. And yeah, it sounds like, it's a frustrating little patch that we're going through in terms of not performing at our peak, but still, I don't know, Ange would never put it this way, I suppose, but that's the sort of latitude that we've, put ourselves the position that we're in. That's why you go hard all the time in order to overcome some of these dips and so on. And as luck would have it, our closest rivals didn't get any closer. In fact, they fell further behind. So, all in all, again, disappointing, but there's a big battle to come next week, and I think that's the one we'll all be looking at.
Yeah, that's a fair summary. I just want to drill down a little bit further into what I saw as being some issues in midfield and what Mahesh in the comments is alluding to there. I didn't think the shape in midfield looked that great. I felt as if although Iwata had a good game, I thought him and McGregor were occupying a lot of the same sort of spaces too much. And both of them were like the wrong side of the ball too much for me, leaving sort of Matt O'Reilly as being the only attacking midfielder. Now, I know a lot of people, they love this midfield of Iwata and Kalmak playing together. I'm not convinced it's the right way to go, especially at home against a team sitting in with a really low block. So I might grab your thoughts on that. Willie, I'll start with you.
Yeah, they're very, very similar in the positions they want to take up on the pitch, and it looks as though it could be a sort of double pivot there. With the two of them, when you're playing teams who are actually going to come out and have a go at you, it might work more effectively in that sense. But when you've got teams that are only ever going to try and hit you on the break, and very seldom they do that, then there's no real need for a double pivot there, is there? So, could it have been a game to put Moy on there, give Kalmak a rest before the Rangers game, put Moy on there, try and get some more minutes into his legs? Possibly, but I don't know. It didn't seem to click there. I mean, they had the possession, they had the ball, but they just didn't seem to utilise it in the final third, as I've said before. Once we got up that pitch, it just didn't seem to work at all, and it's strange.
What did you think of Matt O'Reilly's performance, Willie?
Not a great deal, to be honest with you. He didn't do anything majorly wrong, but he didn't do anything of significance either. It's a pretty bland performance from him.
Yeah. Steve, what would you think of our midfield setup, Steve? How do you think it worked?
It was off. So, if you go back a couple of seasons, we were fairly traditional in terms of we would have a 6, an 8, and a 10. I know this season we've been playing more like a 6 with 2 8s. But my issue is I think Iwata is very talented, and I think in the right games, him playing alongside Kalmak as a double pivot, as 2 6s, works really well. We don't need that in this game, and he probably wasn't being asked to play that in this game, but it felt almost like he reverted back to, the default mode. So both Kalmak and Iwata, it felt like they were sitting too deep. O'Reilly was, pretty isolated, to Willie's point. It felt like at times he was the only one really trying to break the lines. And, quite often, he wasn't, he didn't get the support. So normally, when we're playing with the 2 number 8s, you'd see one of them, push and the other one would be supporting or, drawing a, defender away or whatever. It just didn't feel like that. The other thing I'd say is we have to give credit to Motherwell as well. And I mean, don't get me wrong. I think there's some things that were pretty, not that attractive about what Motherwell did. And we'll talk about some of that in a moment. But I'm kind of always conscious. We tend to focus on what we did, and that's fine. Most of the time, that is fine. But we do have to recognise that how the other team plays influences our ability to impose on the game. And in fairness to Motherwell, they were very, very structured. They stuck to their task, and might not have been that pretty at times, but they really, really stuck to their task. But sorry, coming back to your first point, yeah, it felt off. It felt like 2 6s and a kind of isolated 8, and it didn't really work for me.
Yeah, Dave, I know you didn't catch the game, but what's your general thoughts on that midfield pairing of Kalmack and Iwata both playing at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, it was good to see McGregor have a shot from outside and for it to actually go through. So I think any opportunity he gets to have to be a bit attacking, that's where he's kind of started. That's where he's gone from. So I don't know about the structure. I can't really comment too much on that. But when I did watch it back and to see, just having a shot from outside, it's different to a couple of years ago when we were just kind of belting it from everywhere. And I have heard this said on a few of the podcasts over the last few days. But maybe that's something we need to give a bit of a try when we are struggling to break them down, and like we were in the second half there, to maybe give it a shot from outside.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think we test to keep it enough from outside the box. Just want to mention one other guy, and that's Haksabanovic. I thought he had a pretty ordinary game as well, which didn't help our midfield issues. Take him out and put Jota in that position. I think it seemed to hug the touchline an awful lot. He didn't seem to want to get into any central areas, and he just doesn't seem. He's got a trick in him, but it just doesn't seem to go past players enough, and he seems to be really, really easy to crowd out in the game, and that to me that was a big problem for him. And I think even laterally in the game when Rocco Vata came on, even in his limited minutes, I think he got by the fullback a number of times. He got some really dangerous balls into the box, 2 of which we should have scored from. So what do you reckon about Haksabanovic, Wally?
He seems to lack that yard of pace. I mean, you look at the other guys who play on the wing; they've got that little burst of speed that'll get them beyond someone. They can knock it a little bit longer than the fullback and get in behind them. But Haksabanovic hasn't got that, and he needs to use that trickery. And he just does not look comfortable on the right. He likes to play on the left and come in inside and shoot with his right foot. But I just don't think he has the stamina to play 90 minutes in an handball style of game. I think if he's going to any sort of role he'll have at the club will to be that impact player who's going to come on with 30 minutes to go when the other team's tired and stretched and liable to start making mistakes, and that's where he'll play to some sort of strength, or he'll come into it. But it just doesn't seem to be working. That's 3 starts he's had in the last couple of months, and each one he's been disappointing to say the least.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I just don't see a place for him in the starting 11 just now when everyone's fit. He's done well off the bench in a number of games. He's scored a couple of cracking goals, getting back to Dave's point from outside the box. So he gets plus points for that. But I agree with Willie. I'm very disappointed in how he's performed since being a starter. What do you reckon, Steve?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with what Willie's saying. He's, frankly, he's had his chance. He's, I think that is 3 games. I saw him in the Hearts game midweek at league game midweek, about a month ago, maybe a bit longer. And he was pretty ordinary that night. He's been pretty ordinary in another couple of games. I would have subbed him far earlier. I'm with you. When Vata came on, he looked, and don't get me wrong, he didn't always make it past the man, but he was always trying to get past the man. He was always trying to, do something a bit more creative. Haxa feels more like a kind of impact player, bring him on, maybe against more tired legs, 20 minutes to go, and when he's got the energy, that might be more his thing. But I would have been tempted to hook him, earlier at the weekend. The other thing is he's very clearly more comfortable playing off the left and cutting in, and it felt like he swapped with Maeda for long periods of that game as well. So we kind of, that would have been fine if it made a dramatic impact in terms of his productivity, but it didn't. He was still fairly ineffective coming off the left. But it also meant we actually reduced Maeda's effectiveness as well. So it felt a bit off, and I know Ange is a big one for, once the players are on the pitch, let them solve the problems. But it felt a little bit like, there should have been a bit of direction, in terms of, no, actually, stick to your task, or, we'll change the task.
Yeah, bringing. Sorry, Dave, when you go.
Oh no, just adding to that, Haksabanovic has always felt a bit like he seems to just charge like a bull, sort of like he seems to run in straight lines and kind of try and get behind with his pace, compared to a Jota, who is using smarts and pace and sort of it seems to be a bit more kind of cultured, or whatever the word might be. But I don't have any examples or data to back that up or anything. But that's just maybe it's his haircut. I don't know. He just seems to be sort of always running at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and maybe not quite trying too hard, but just not have the nuance of some of the players who can unlock defence. And to see Rocco Vada come on and actually do that. I mean, I saw the highlights. I saw like 2 or 3 kind of crosses coming, delivered direct to someone's head from Vada in space. So, maybe it's not quite. He's just, and I think as Willie and Steve both pointed out, he's had a fair chance now, and he could have made himself the number one. And doesn't play favourites in that way. It's your jersey to lose, and he may have lost it. Seems like it anyway. Although, whether Jota's back or not, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we should bear in mind that Haksabanovic is only 23. So he's not in any way an older player, even though I reckon he looks about 45. But it's maybe a bit deceptive. He is a young player, and he still got a lot of development to go. So I wouldn't be writing him off yet. But it seems a weird, for me, the decision to take off when he brought on Vata. That was he should have made a straight swap Haksabanovic for Vata when he put Kyogo out wide. Because for me that was a strange substitution, because Kyogo can't play wide. He just can't. We know that from at the start of last season when he was forced to play wide in a few games. He just can't do it. So I thought that was a strange substitution.
I must admit, I was actually just checking, because that big chance that O had towards the end, kind of like, I want to say 5 minutes to go, part of me kind of thinks, if that goes in, do you know what? We do the whole show is different, we're talking about the we never stop, yada, yada, yada. But it didn't, but part of me also thinks, if Kyogo was more central, would he have been a better chance of scoring that, or whatever. I mean, it's a bad miss regardless of. But I was actually just checking to see, in terms of substitutions, who was still on the pitch at that time. So yeah, it felt like we didn't have the right shape. Going back to your comment, Stephen, pushing Kyogo out wide. I don't know. It just felt clumsy, frankly. And when Moy came on, and I know, Willie, you're saying maybe that was the game to give Moy more minutes, get more minutes in his legs. I thought he was poor when he came on as well. So we just didn't have the spark, and that's, we all love Hatate for a lot of different reasons, but, sometimes it's just that creative spark that he provides that I think we were just missing at the weekend.
So yeah, most of the guys in the comments are in agreement about Haksabanovic. But one comment from Martin is asking why isn't Turnbull getting more game time? Do we think it's done and dusted for Turnbull?
It's looking that way. Like, he's really, really far down the pecking order now. Like, I would say he'll probably be away come the summer, unless he's happy to stay and be a squad player. Keeps the numbers for the homegrown thing or association trained thing up at the level we want. I mean, if he goes, you need to get another Scottish player in, possibly, to replace him. So, but it's not looking good for him really at the moment, because it took a while for him to come on, and when he came on, it was, I can't remember what time he came on now, but he didn't really do much either when he got on the pitch. Like, usually when teams are stretched, you watch the.
He was only on for 3 minutes plus injury time, so 10, 11 minutes, And Turnbull, he reminds me a bit of Rogic, in terms of he needs a bit of a run of time, to get up to speed. I'm a big Tommy fan. I love watching Tommy, and we'll touch on him later on. But Turnbull reminds me of that. He needs a couple of runs of games, or he needs a bit of time to get into the game. The thing that strikes me, though, just thinking about Turnbull, is he was such a mainstay of the team last year. He was not far off one of the first names on the team sheet. Obviously he got that injury. He was then out of the picture for a prolonged period of time. And I know we've spoken before about the fact that, seeing how far he is off it now, that could be because we've raised the bar, or it could be because he's fallen, off the way a little bit. But it's just such a marked contrast to last year, the early part of the last season, when he was literally one of the constants in that team, and it feels like such a huge fall from grace in terms of, where he's at now.
But it has felt like an upgrade from last year until the last few weeks. Really, I can't really see who he's displacing on the season's performance. Being a mainstay last year, when last year was kind of like a makeshift team in transition, it feels like this is more the team that has been trying to be put together, and whether Turnbull's just hanging around, as backup. And so whether that could be a good role. He's good value when he comes on, maybe, I don't know, but it seems like it's Ange building Ange's side, and he's maybe a casualty of that.
Okay, but as we have a segue into what I want to talk to next, Mahesh in the comments says Taylor's defence of Van Veen shows why Celtic still have a gap to fill at left back in terms of Europe. So we've already kind of touched on it a little bit. Not only was it very poor defending by Taylor, he was left 1-on-1 with the striker from what was initially a corner to us, and that should never happen. I just want to get your thoughts on what you reckon went wrong that brought him into that position. Willie, I've got you first.
He's on his own for a start. It should be two. It should always be two there covering, whether it's the two full-backs drop in, or the centre-halves move forward for the set piece, or the two smallest guys on the pitch, or the two least likely to score. There should always be two stood there waiting for any sort of counter-attack long ball that might come up and over. He was on his own, and he just looked all at sea. It really was. You could say schoolboy stuff, but you could see schoolboys defending a little bit better than that at times. He just got lost. He spun around, and when he spun around, it's like, well, you've just given him the impetus, and it let Van Veen pick his position instead of standing up and pushing him out to the wide, where he's not going to get a shot on. Van Veen just picked his spot. Says, right, I'm going to move in there and got his shot away. But he should have had someone there beside him. He said, he's turning around, he's looking, he's got nobody on this side. He didn't know which way Van Veen was going to go, and it was a guessing game for him, and it just all went horribly wrong for him. Whereas if he had another guy beside him, he says, right, I'll try and push him this way. If he comes across that way, you pick him up. And there was nobody there to sort of support him. So it was painful to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, I've watched it back a couple of times today. And it all started with, as I said, with a corner kick to us, which Matt O'Reilly took really quickly. And it didn't seem as if anyone was expecting the quick corner. And the team didn't really have time to get their shape. I think Iwata was kind of halfway up the park. And he wasn't... He didn't have time to set himself in a defensive sense. So I think that was it. And O'Reilly got crowded out on the edge of the box, and the ball got played forward quickly to Van Veen. And credit to Van Veen, he's a very good player and a very good vein of form. And we have to give credit to Motherwell for this as well. They defended really well during the game, and Van Veen scored a great goal. But just getting back to the comment about Taylor, do you think... I'll put this one to you, Steve. Do you think we should be trying to upgrade at left back in the summer?
Look, there's some discussion that Taylor's been playing with a bit of an injury, and we don't really know what the nature of that injury is, but he really didn't look that mobile. I mean, he's actually one of the faster players at the club, but he really didn't look that mobile at the weekend. And again, credit to Van Veen. He plays it really smartly. He takes him one way, then the other. To Willie's point, it felt like Taylor was still reacting to Van Veen's last move. When Van Veen's making his next move, and so I wouldn't read too much into that for the weekend. It was a poor handling in that situation, but does it mean we need an upgrade at left back for next season? I think that's a broader discussion. I'll have to say I'm not convinced by Bernabei. I know we spent a lot of money on him. I know he's young. I know Ange, who is probably a little bit more qualified to say this than I am, but I'm just not convinced by him. We all saw him at the Sydney Super Cup, where he was ridiculously bad in terms of his positioning, and I just think at the European level, that's going to be, disastrous. I think Taylor does a job for us. I think we've seen a huge improvement in Taylor over the course of the last year, 18 months. Has he got more room for growth? Yes. Has he reached his own peak? Maybe, I think it's an area we could look at, but we probably need to move a Bernabei along, and I don't think Ange would do that. I think Ange sees a talent in Bernabei that he wants to exploit. So probably slight difference between what I think and what I think will happen, what I think should happen. So
yeah, I think certainly I expected Bernabei to be first choice left back by this point in the season, so I think he has been disappointing. But I agree with you, Steve. I don't think Ange would be drawing a line through him just yet. And what about yourself, Willie? Do you think we'd be looking for a new left back in the transfer window?
I don't think it will be the top of the shopping list. It might be if something comes available that's affordable and that will work for us, then they'll move on it. But I can't see it being top of the shopping list, to be honest. I think a second striker and a goalkeeper will be number one priority, possibly another winger. But Taylor, that's the first mistake he's had in a while, I think. He's generally a solid player. He generally plays pretty well for us. So, and as you say, he's carrying a bit of an injury. You see him, I think there's a game there not long ago, he was out at half time, still moving around with the subs who were warming up, just because if he stops, he's going to seize up. So maybe that is impacting him. But I think, like I say, I think he was... he should have had someone there beside him that might have helped him out in this situation. He just kind of got a little bit tangled up all on his own without anyone there beside him, which we should have had. But whoever that was meant to be, they kind of let him down there too. And he's kind of been made to be the scapegoat and all. But credit to Van Veen. Van Veen exploited it all, saw the situation and took his chance. So I don't know. It's like I say, I wouldn't really have it as high priority just yet. But if these mistakes, if it carries on like this, then perhaps the injuries, maybe it is something you need to look at. I don't know.
He does seem prone to injury. He seems to have, over the last year, and don't get me wrong, we're asking him to do different things from what he used to do, but he does seem to pick up more regular niggles. Yeah. I was just having a quick look. Someone's mentioned in the comments Alistair Johnston's the kind of benchmark, obviously, on the other side. I'm actually trying to remember how much we paid for Alistair Johnston.
It was about 2.5 million, I think. 2.4, something like that.
2 something.
So part of me kind of thinks, yeah, let's just go and find another Alistair Johnston for the other side. But part of me thinks if we could, then it might be, to Willie's point, might be a bit opportunistic. It might be that we just try and execute it if it comes along, but we'll see.
Well, I think we should just, in my opinion, we should just go and re-sign Kieran Tierney I'm sure the £90,000 a week wages won't be a problem. We can always get big Dermot Desmond to dip into his pocket. But yeah, I think it's probably something the club are looking at. The extent of the injury is probably something we don't know, but it's obviously not so bad that it's keeping him from playing. And I think it's clear that Ange doesn't really trust Bernabei just yet, especially not in big games. Just before we move off the game, I just want to grab your thoughts on the Motherwell tactics of time wasting, rolling around injured, and it got a little bit farcical at one point. Now, Angie's comments after the game were that it was fair enough, really, and that if we allow the game to get into that situation, then Motherwell are probably within their rights to use those sort of methods to try and get the draw. But what do we think? Is it very poor from them, or is it fair enough? Dave, what's your thoughts?
It's a constant source of discussion over here in Australia, and one of the main criticisms and reasons why people say that they switch off from the game here. When I've taken people onto games in the A-League or elsewhere, and sort of they can get into it, but then it gets to a point where you see this carry on, and it was nowhere near, from what I gather, happened on the weekend. It's sort of habitual within the game, and sort of there's a cultural sort of acceptance to some level within the game more broadly. But it sounds like they took it to whole new levels. But during this week in the Australian Football League, we're having a debate about whether a guy is concussed, from a hit that's 3 or 4 seconds after releasing the ball, and people are sort of debating, is that okay? Maybe we should be ruling that out, compared to this sort of rolling around. So I'm by no means saying that it should toughen up like Australian football. I think Australian football has got a reckoning coming towards it in terms of head injuries and actual safety. But I don't think any of us think that the Motherwell players are any physical danger the other day. I don't think we need to, get into that level of debate. But it's because it's coming from an Australian perspective like that. It's infuriating to see that sort of those sort of tactics applied, and I can see that a lot of people are saying, "Well, fair's fair," and that's a strategy, that's a tactic, and they executed it well. I think that's not that Motherwell have the expansion of the game in Australia in mind when they're sort of playing their games, but I do think that's something that's pretty hard to take from our perspective. It's cynical as well, I think we all understand that it's cynical and not fair.
And Steve, what did you make? What do you make of Motherwell's tactics?
Look, it is what it is. We shouldn't be leaving ourselves in that situation. Really. At the end of the day, I didn't particularly like it, but it feels a bit. I don't know what the word is. To kind of sit here and complain about it. At the end of the day, if it's us against Real Madrid, and we are drawing 1-1 in the Bernabeu, would I think that and Iwata might take the ball into the corner? Yeah, I think they probably would. And I think if they were successful in running down a couple of minutes and doing that, I think we'd all be sat here going, smart play. I don't particularly love it, but it's a fact of life, really. I mean, it's the thing that annoys me slightly about it, actually. Sorry, so that's one point. It's fair enough. It is what it is. But it's the inconsistency of the referees. You've got Nick Walsh turning around to Barry Robson, the Aberdeen manager, at the weekend, telling him to get the ball boys to get the ball on quicker because the ball boys were, dicking around, with Aberdeen 2-0 up against the Rangers. And you've got that happening, but then in our game, you've got John Beaton, basically letting them just roll around off the pitch and then roll back onto the pitch, and it's just that inconsistency annoys me. So from a gamesmanship perspective, I think, it is what it is. But from a spectacle perspective, I think it's pretty poor, really.
Willie, do you agree with that?
I thought it was an embarrassment, to be honest with you. I thought some of their play-up team was just so stupid. Like, goalkeeper, he went down, he was holding his knee, he was injured, he was done. That was it. You're thinking, this is his game over. The sub-keeper's going to come on here, and then all of a sudden he's up and he's taken by kicks. Like, the hardest part of me was figuring out where the sniper was. I'm pretty sure he was in the Lisbon Lions stand, but I don't know was it the upper or lower tier, because he was picking them off at will at one point. To your point, Stevie, you're saying about taking the ball into the corner, I mean, to run down the clock. That's fair enough. You're running down the clock, but these guys are diving about. Right, that's me. I'm down. Get the kit man on with the magic sponge. Man, there's 3 minutes. That 3 minutes gets added onto the clock because it's a stoppage. You know what I mean? If you take the ball for a walk, the clock's ticking down. It's not adding on to the other end of it. Like, so it's I don't know. It's kind of counterproductive, if you know what I mean. Yeah. Aye. Nah, no, for me, like, I wouldn't be doing that sort of thing. Like, I think there was one guy who went sliding into a tackle. He missed the tackle and he missed the ball, and he just looked around, realised he'd missed everything, and then started rolling around. And it's just like, oh, come on, man. I think even John Beaton turned around and just went like, like, come on, you're embarrassing yourself here, like, you know.
I know that Ange's dad wouldn't have enjoyed that spectacle. So we know that Ange won't do that against Real Madrid in times to come, because that's what guides his style of play.
Yeah, I think I tend to agree with Ange on this one. We should have had the game won, notwithstanding any of that stuff, and it takes that out of the equation. We did have, as many people have pointed out in the comments, if we scored our chances, particularly the 1-0 missed, we win the game. And if we'd taken all our chances, we win it quite comfortably. So, but all's well that ends well. The cream bun's getting well and truly pumped up in Aberdeen. Michael Beale crying after the game again, inventing imaginary fouls and talking all sorts of nonsense. I heard a great word on Twitter the other day there. They're now calling it Beale shit. So he's talking Beale shit. So he's added a new word to the English language every week when he gets interviewed. It's more and more hilarious. But yeah, hopefully he's around for a while yet. So just moving on, straight hot off the press, the post-split fixtures have been released, and we are away to Hearts on Sunday the 7th of May, away to the aforementioned Cream Buns on the 13th of May, we're at home to St Mirren on the 20th of May, away to Hibs midweek on the 24th of May, and then we finish it up at home to Aberdeen on the 27th of May, which will be Flag Day. So what are we thinking about those fixtures? That Hearts game, my first thought is it's quite disappointing because there'll be very few Celtic fans there. You get a very small allocation for Tynecastle. It's also on a Sunday, but I think it had to be, given the fact that the absolute farce that is the coronation is happening on the Saturday. So I think having the game on the same day as that would have been just asking for trouble. But I would have expected Celtic to have a home game that weekend to just wrap up the league, and then after that, the fixtures, they can do what they want with the fixtures. What's your thoughts on that, Willie? Go to you first.
Yeah, I'm just looking at them now. Hearts away, followed by Rangers away. So the next couple of weeks the next couple of weeks after the semi-final will have limited Celtic fans in the grounds, right? So St Mirren home, and then away to Hibs, and then home Aberdeen. That's trickier sort of running there. Hibs away is always a game you don't look forward to. It's a tricky venue to go to. Aberdeen at home, we've got a great record in that sort of game. It's I would like to have had a home game. Yeah, definitely had a home game for the first one. I don't know why there was the big delay. I take it there was some sort of problem with the TV. Sky weren't happy with the fixtures.
I think Sky wanted the Derby match to be the first game after.
I wouldn't have minded that too, actually. But obviously it would have been a title decided. Well, a title clincher It's obviously never going to happen, is it? Like,
and there'll be no Celtic fans there to see that. So I didn't really want that. I didn't want that at all. But I seen a good, interesting thing on Twitter today saying the choice for Rangers is: do they want to clap us off the field as champions or onto the field as champions? So,
they're not. You're not getting a guard on enough for them, are you? Like, you know.
Yeah. We have this argument every couple of years.
Maybe
it was more pertinent when they went to win the league in the closed door championship. Right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I was just thinking maybe they're Michael Beale's assistant, Neil Banfield, who's come out in the press this week, with it's his turn to talk rubbish in the press rather than Michael Beale's. Maybe he'll insist on the Guard of Honour because, he's been out spouting in the press this week. Maybe he'll...
And said something bad, but I'm not telling you what it was.
I'll keep it to myself.
Give us peace, mate. Come on.
It's left a taste in my mouth. It's left a taste in my mouth. That taste is defeat, mate.
But you know the best thing is, you know how everybody says, "Oh yeah, Michael Beale, he was the genius behind Steven Gerrard," which kind of makes me laugh anyway. But part of me now thinks, "Oh my god, I hope Neil Banfield is the genius behind Michael Beale."
He's next in line, isn't he?
It's like a series of Scooby-Doo villains, revealing the mask. And
who's the real brains?
If it wasn't for you pesky Fenians.
Yeah, as I was saying before, we tend to have this Guard of Honour argument every couple of years when we go to their place, where they either a championship just about to be won or tucked away in the pocket already. So maybe we should set some sort of precedent. But seriously, it's never going to happen. So it's not even any point in having that discussion, to be honest. All right, we'll move on. Maybe just have a quick chat now that the split has been confirmed. Might just kind of have a quick go around and see if there was any teams out with Celtic and the Huns who've caught your eye this season, have done well, or a team that's particularly done badly. Willie, what about yourself? Any other teams had a really good season, do you reckon?
St Mirren get a gold star for me. At the beginning of the season, I do that BBC league predictor. So if you swap them and Dundee United around in their positions, you'd have the top six and bottom six the way I had it. Not in exact positions, but you'd have the same six in the top and same six in the bottom. Dundee United have had a bit of an abysmal season, but they seem to have strung a few results along there this last couple of weeks, which has put Ross County really deep in the shit at the moment, right? So the league looks about how I would have sort of said it would have looked roughly, but like I say, Dundee United, St Mirren switch your positions around and it might be sort of closer to where I would have had it to begin with. Like.
Steve, what about yourself? Anyone caught your eye?
I mean, Hibs and Aberdeen have actually kind of had a really strong second half of the year, or the season rather. They were both really struggling. You think it really wasn't that long ago the two of them looked like they could be in serious danger. So seeing them shoot up the league, secure top half, and really be in the battle for third, which is quite an interesting little battle in its own sort of way. That's kind of caught my eye a little bit. And with Willie, I think St Mirren have done really well. Their home form has been absolutely fantastic. Away form, obviously weaker. Other than that, now I'd probably just point to the kind of second half of the season for Aberdeen and Hibs.
And yourself, Dave, what do you reckon about some of the teams in the SPL?
I mean, from this distance all the way over here, like they do often all sort of resemble each other in some ways. So it is hard to really make that judgment without it sort of being in the news the whole time and sort of and so on. But I do always try and keep an eye on St Johnstone as a West Australian myself, and coming from Perth, and the team from Perth has kind of always taken my eye. It 2 years just shows 2 years is a long time. It was a couple of years ago that they won 2 cups, and they had Galatasaray, held them sort of 1-1 at away in Istanbul, and hasn't it fallen apart since then? From what I gather, there's been quite a lot of turnover and a pretty tough environment to sort of maintain a competitive team with the being relatively isolated within Scotland, and hard to attract support and so on. So yeah, I wouldn't say they've been disappointed. It's not like I came in with some great expectations around St Johnstone, but it kind of shows that sometimes you've got to take advantage of your opportunities when they come, and it could be a long time for them.
Yeah, so I kind of agree with everything that's been said to them. I would also maybe comment a little bit on Dundee United, who at one stage looked gone. It looked as if they were heading down, but Jim Goodwin's done a reasonable job there. So I think he needs to get some points for that after a fairly disastrous time at Aberdeen. So Dundee United seem to be going in the right direction. We're not out of the woods yet, of course, but it certainly looks to be a three-way shootout between Ross County, Kilmarnock and Dundee United. So all those teams, particularly Kilmarnock, have had a very poor season. But yeah, the third looks to be Aberdeen's to lose now, after being really nowhere for a long part of the season, and they were very good against the Huns on the weekend there and fully deserved their win. Very impressed. Liam Scales looked good, the Celtic loan player, and the boy Duke up front also looks a really good player. So they'll be tough for us to beat in the post-split fixture on the last day of the season. But hopefully by that it'll just be a day of celebration for us. So yeah, some interesting stuff there.
Those boys up front for Aberdeen, they've done really well. Is it Duke and Miofsky?
Yeah.
I read something during the week saying, I think if they both got 15 goals this season or something, and it's like one of the first time in a long time that 2 players from outside Celtic or the Rangers have ended up, with 2 players, scoring 15 goals each. It's quite impressive if true. I didn't fact check it, but if true, it's quite impressive.
Yeah, I saw that Van Veen from Motherwell was on 24 goals. Jeez, that's a good total for a player out with Celtic or Rangers. He set himself a target of 30 goals for the season. If you got a Motherwell striker scoring 30 goals, considering they're on a goal difference of -4 at the moment, so that's a great.
They've scored 44.
Yeah,
they've scored 44 in the league.
Yeah, and he's scored 24 of them.
You got these players with the great scoring records, and then you look at the goal differences for the other teams out with Celtic and Rangers. I think Hearts is the only one that's got a positive goal difference. Everyone else is like right into the minuses.
Yeah.
Yep.
Strange viewing.
Yeah. All right, moving on from that. So looking ahead to next week, we'll leave the sort of preview of the Cup semi-final to the Wednesday Pot Noodle show tomorrow. Don't forget to tune into that one. And we're just going to look back at a couple of memorable Scottish or Cup semi-finals from some not so recent years. And I'll go to you first, Willie. What was your favourite Cup semi-final memory?
So for me, it was the 29th of April 2018. We played Sevco, Graham Murty's Sevco at Hampden, and we beat them 4-0. Moussa Dembele hit the post very early on in the game, so a clear indication how this game was going to play out. Tom Rogic scored in the first half. He had 2 guys on top of him and 2 guys in very close proximity to him, and he still managed to get his shot away and rounded fingertips of Wes Foderingham. Cal McGregor made it sort of 2-0 before half-time. Kieran Tierney whipped the ball in straight on. It was pretty much landed on the centre spot, hit the Rangers player, sort of fluffed the clearance, and Cal McGregor put it past the keeper. Into the second half, is it Ross McCrory or Robbie McCrory? One of the McCrorys bundled Dembele over and was sent off by none other than Bobby Madhan himself. And Dembele just waited for Fotheringham to make his move with the penalty and just gave a little dink to the opposite side. It was a great penalty, actually. Like. Fourth goal was another penalty. This time it was in Charm, and he slotted it right past the keeper's fingertips. There were some really good saves from Craig Gordon in there, even from sitting down on his arse. Morelos hit the ball straight at him, and he managed to save it. It was actually the closest Rangers came that whole game to getting a goal was in Lustig claffed a clearance, and it went over his head and hit the crossbar. So, but some other positives, things that were great to see in that game was Andy Halliday getting hooked at half time. It's always great to see that. And then the revelations that Graham Murty had revealed that Rangers players were cheering in the dressing room when they'd drawn Celtic in the cup, and there was also footage from either the Loudon or the Bristol bar, the fans cheering because they'd drawn Celtic, and there was a big roar because they thought it was their time and they were going to do it. But they got pumped 4-0, and then 2 weeks later we went and played them at Parkhead and pumped them 5-0. So that was 9 goals in 2 weeks against them. Great times.
Yeah, that was a game when Andy Halliday had a massive strop. He went off the park. It was throwing things around on the bench and bawling and shouting at everyone. That was beyond hilarious. That was good. Yeah, that was a good one, Willie. Steve, yourself?
Sorry, I remember that Andy Halliday storming off and like kicking stuff. And I think we were all singing as well, Andy Halliday. Oh God, that was funny. And hearing Graham Murty, do you know what? I'd kind of almost forgotten about Graham Murty as well. So I'm actually going the previous season, so 2016, 2017, again against the Rangers. So this was the treble season. So we talked about this actually a couple of weeks ago on the pod, comparing the sides and whatnot. But yeah, so this one ended up 2-0 to the good guys. Kalmak with a lovely goal. I think it was Lustig sends the ball long to Dembele. He takes a touch and then cuts it back inside, and then Kalmak just shapes it round Wes Fotheringham. Lovely goal, really nicely done. And then the second goal was a penalty from Scotty Sinclair after, and I mean this is bizarre. Tav Penn, to give him his full title, runs the width of the pitch and then takes out Lee Griffiths, completely takes him out, and then stands up, and looks so shocked when Willie Collum awards the penalty, which is probably a story in itself. But I watched the highlights today to remind myself of it, and one of the things that stuck out to me was the sound that the ball hits when it hits the back of the net for the Kalmak goal. You hear the net ripple, and then the sound, when Scotty Sinclair hits his penalty and it goes in off the post, it absolutely rattles the post, and it was just funny. But some echoes to this weekend's game coming up. Willie Collum, referee again. Substitute Pedro Cachina for Michael Beale. And then you've got mouthpieces like Joey Garner and Martin Waghorn and whatnot. You can substitute them out and put in a Todd Cantwell, is it? And Nico Raskin. You could just there's just, it feels like there's an echo through time. So we'll see. And then, funnily enough, the following week after that game, we went out and beat them 5-1 at Ibrox, which I think was the biggest win at Ibrox for a long time. So yeah, that's my memory of the 2016-2017 Scottish Cup semi-final against the Rangers, 2-0 to the good guys.
The best thing about that game was the Rangers TV commentary. I don't know if you've ever got a chance to catch that. And the sliding challenge by Tav Penn, the commentator, I can't remember his name, it's Tom something.
Tom Miller.
Tom Miller, that's right. And he says, what a magnificent challenge from Tav Penn. Oh no, wait, what? A penalty? and despite seeing 3 or 4 replays showing clearly that he'd scythed down Lee Griffiths, got nowhere near the ball, he still insisted that it was a terrible decision. But that was hilarious.
I mean, the other thing, just watching it, and it's funny watching games. I mean, that's relatively recently. How long ago was that? 6 years ago. Obviously pre-VAR. But Andy Halliday absolutely halves Paddy Roberts on the halfway line. I mean, like a ridiculous challenge on Paddy Roberts, you know. And of course, Colin plays advantage, which takes the sting out of, you know, the issue at the time, then goes back and books him, you know. But honestly, I've never seen a more certain sending off, you know, which Colin obviously just, you know, pooed himself and decided, no, I'm not going down that route. But yeah, it's just kind of interesting watching a relatively recent game, you know, and thinking, oh, you just wouldn't, you know, that wouldn't happen now, would it? You know?
You wouldn't get away with that now, no.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully more of the same. Any one of those two scores would be fine on Sunday coming. And Dave, what's your cup semi-final memory?
Yeah, well, I'll carry on the St Johnstone theme, and I've actually, you know, I realise that I've gone for the wrong cup, but it's the League Cup semi-final from last year. Actually, it's a pretty memorable one for me. So that was the week that Bertie Auld died, and there was the most incredible display on the 67th minute, and you know the song and so it must have been about 6 o'clock in the morning here, and my daughter gets up to if it's an early game, she'll get up. She's 11 years old, and she got up to watch it. If it's a European game or if it's one of those ones that's at night time, then she's like, "Oh, wake me up and I'll come." And she's normally half asleep, and it's kind of, you know, she's not really that into it. She kind of just wants to see Kyogo, really, and talk about him. But this one, it was quite incredible because it was a pretty flat game. Not flat, but like nip and tuck, you know. It was 0-0, and till at least till the 67th minute. And then this kind of enormous surge erupts from the crowd, and they're singing that song, you know, the 67 in the heat of Lisbon. And this incredible pyrotechnic display with Bertie Auld's image comes up. And my daughter sort of just woke up because it was so loud compared to everything else. And she said, "What's going on? Like, what happened?" I said, "Nothing, it's 0-0. And so then that prompted me to talk about 1967 and those bits of history, you know. And you know, but I myself, I didn't grow up in Scotland, and I'm, you know, I know who Bertie Auld is, but I don't really know, you know, didn't grow up with those stories. So what a prompt to come from the crowd to be talking about this incredible figure in history, and for my daughter to kind of notice it so much that but the way that it lifted the team, and actually, I think it was maybe within 10 minutes. James Forrest scores, of all people, and puts them ahead 1-0 to go into the final. And you know, it's the League Cup, whatever. But just the significance of that moment, I think, the connection back to the Lisbon Lions. But also, we still didn't know what the Ange project was happening at that point. That was a really critical win, that one. And we know, you know, they went on to the final, and Kyogo scores those incredible 2 goals and doesn't play for another few months. But yeah, to me, it just kind of summed up so much of what I love about this club and this culture that is part of, and an opportunity to educate my daughter around that, you know. And I've shown it to a few people around here sometimes when I've had a few, and they're kind of like, "Why do you go for Celtic?" And I kind of show them that, you know, and they get it. Yeah, so.
Yeah, it's interesting the sort of positive effect the Green Brigade have had on Celtic as a club and as a support. And I know they get a little bit of bad press at times, but geez, they've been really good. Some of these tifos and full stadium displays they've done have been incredible, and certainly they've made a huge difference to the atmosphere at games. So yeah, I'm right on board with what those guys bring to the club.
They're always on target with the tifos, aren't they? They never miss with them, like, you know.
Yeah, they never miss a spot. Yeah. All right, just one last thing I wanted to talk about. 4 years ago this week, we lost one of the biggest legends in the club, and that was Billy McNeil. I just wanted to talk a bit about Billy McNeil. Yeah, so Billy joined Celtic in 1958. Just the year after the famous 7-1 victory over Rangers that we spoke about. in a previous podcast. His nickname was Caesar, contrary to popular belief. Wasn't after the Roman Emperor, but after the American actor Cesar Romero. Made his debut in a League Cup tie to Clyde at home on 23rd of August 1958, and played his last game at Hampden in the Scottish Cup final victory over Airdrie on the 3rd of May 1975. Overall, played 486 games for Celtic and earned a ridiculously small 29 caps for Scotland. Spent 2 spells as Celtic manager from 1978 to 1983 and again from 1987 to 1991. Captained the Lisbon Lions in Lisbon in 1967, and the image of him lifting the European Cup in Lisbon, possibly one of the most iconic pictures in football, never mind Celtic history. Finished his playing career with a trophy haul of 1 European Cup, 9 league titles, 6 Scottish League Cups and 7 Scottish Cups. And then as manager, a further 4 Scottish League titles, 3 Scottish Cups and 1 League Cup. The word legend is often misused, but Billy was a true Celtic legend. As a player, the most influential on-field figure at the club during the Doc Stein era, and he was Stein's most trusted player on the park. Cemented his place in Celtic folklore by managing the club to the double during the centenary season in 1987 and 1988. Despite this, he was treated fairly deplorably by the old board. Both occasions he was in the manager's position. But thankfully now he's recognised as one of the most important figures in the club's history, culminating in a statue of Billy holding European Cup aloft being erected at Celtic Park in 2015, looking out across the city, perhaps showing other clubs what they will never have. Billy sadly passed away on the 22nd of April 2019 from the symptoms, complications from dementia, and is sadly missed by everyone at the club. So I might just go around and grab your thoughts or memories of Billy McNeill. Steve, start with you.
I know we were just chatting about Bertie Auld, and people used to think of Bertie as kind of Mr. Celtic, but to me, Billy McNeill just absolutely epitomised everything about the club. He was, his determination to win as a player. I actually think he managed through difficult times, but he managed, well through, difficult times. But he was everything about Celtic, to my mind. So great ambassador. I agree with you. I think, if you go back to that period, sometimes the club made some pretty poor decisions in terms of how we treated our kind of elder statesmen of the club. Made some pretty poor decisions, and it was a shame to see him kind of caught up in that. But I think post that, he certainly, came back onto the scene, and he was a very visible icon for the club. So yeah.
Yeah, Willie, memories of Big Billy.
To me, he was the manager. When my early memories of Celtic, like the centenary double and that, he was the manager, you know what I mean? And you'd speak to my uncle who's a Celtic fan, and he remembers him as a player. So, and as Steve says, he was Mr. Celtic, you know what I mean? He just epitomised Celtic Football Club and everything it stands for. If you ask any of the generations of fans who are on the go now, they'll all see him in a different light. Some might see him as like an ambassador. People in my uncle's generation will see him as a player. People who might be slightly older than that will, well, not so much the player, but people of our generation will see him as a manager. You know, I mean, everyone will see him differently, but what you will see is Celtic, and you will see Billy McNeill, the one and the same. You know, he lived and breathed Celtic. He's an icon, you know what I mean? And the statue outside the stadium just does the credit that he deserves, you know what I mean? It'll be there forevermore.
And Dave, you might not have much memories of Billy McNeill at Celtic,
but no memories at all. So it's been great to listen in and to have a bit of a think in the lead up to coming on today. But again, just to reiterate, I suppose that's the the reverence for history that this club has and its supporters and the cultures that are part of it is, one of the really attractive things about it, I think. And I know every club has its legends, but this club and its supporters, I think, really do a good job of, making those memories and, not just about nostalgia, but about standing for something and about some sort of, connection with some values. That doesn't, we'll talk at some point, like that doesn't always enable. I'm not talking about, anything to do with Billy McNeil, but, sometimes you can be a bit too wedded to histories and not, move on or something. And, there's a lot of examples of that through every club's history, but, certainly Celtic's history. But I think the way that, I don't even know if it's the club, but the supporters, and the fan culture here around people like him, just hearing to you all talking about him just now and seeing the comments just now, like, it's a credit to this club and to its supporters. And
I was fortunate enough to meet Billy McNeil a couple of times, a few times at various Celtic functions, and I was occasionally known to pop into his pub down in Vicky Road, McNeil's Bar down there in Torresdale Street, and a nicer guy you could never meet, and a great ambassador for the club, right through his whole life. And it was really sad day when we lost him. So you get a chance to raise a glass to Big Billy at some point this week. So we're almost at the end of another fun-filled episode. Sorry, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, so I was in the UK recently. I was up in Glasgow recently, and my mother and my family live close to Bells Hill, where I think Billy McNeil's originally from. And I know they put up a new statue there. I meant to go and have a look. I didn't actually get round to it, but I've just had a look at it. And I know him holding up the European Cup is an iconic image, but have a look at the statue in Bells Hill as well when you get a chance, listeners, because it's another iconic image. I think it's from him walking out onto the pitch in Lisbon, and he's got, he's just the barrel chest, chest out, head held high. It's quite an image, to have a look at as well. So, have a look at that if you get a chance.
Yeah, I think I'll need to try and check that out next time I'm home. So we're almost at the end of another great episode. So that's been great fun again. I'll just go around and grab some final thoughts off you. Wally, start with you.
Derby weekend. Let's do this.
Short and sweet. Love it. Steve, yourself?
Probably pretty similar. We're getting towards the back end of the season. Let's just get this done. I'd like to see us play more the way we can play, more the way we played, most of the season. If you think back to that first 20 minutes, 25 minutes against Kilmarnock, it was stunning football. I'd love to do that next, on the weekend against that lot and absolutely put this whole myth of, them closing the gap or, all the rest of it, just put that to bed, So let's focus on the performance, and I think the outcomes will follow that.
Nice one. Dave, final thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'll make sure I check the TV schedule this time before I rearrange my evening. But I'm pretty sure that the Rangers and Celtic Cup semi-final will be broadcast on KO this weekend. So very much looking forward to it. And like Steve, I hope we can show once and for all who's boss around here. Be great.
Yeah, I'd echo all those sentiments. So my final thought is it's 20 years to the day since we beat Boa Vista to qualify for the UEFA Cup final in Seville. So if that doesn't make you feel old, nothing will. All right, so that's us for tonight. Please remember to check out the other Celtic Down Under shows. The Fantastic Weekend Review show on the Monday night and the Wednesday Pot Noodle show tomorrow, which will have an in-depth preview of the Cup semi-final. And with that, I'll just say, hail, hail, and good night, everyone.
All right.
Hail, hail.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.